To hesitate.
Amazing. With our special guest host, Raven.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thanks so much for being here. We're super excited to be down here in San Diego. We just came off of an amazing adventure out at Lake Isabella at Dave Sandoval's Oasis, and now we are here in San Diego with my dear friend, my mentor, my coach, Ronnie Landis, who has just completely awakened a whole new level of human potential within myself, also within my partner, Robert Brown, and within our community, which is really incredible. And that's why we're here today, and that's why we're doing this live, is so that we can share with all of you guys. Is that one recording too? Is that one rolling also? Yeah? Okay, cool. Hi, guys. So make sure that you share this post, make sure you tag your peeps in it, and we'd love it to be interactive. So if there's anything that you want to comment on as we're talking, any other pieces you want to add to our conversation, we would love to have you join us. So I think we have at least 7 cameras rolling in the room right now, so we'll do our best.
So we're covering the globe.
We'll do our best to be as present with all the angles as possible. But for those of you who don't know, my name is Raven CJ Little, and I have an extensive history not only in organic farming, but also in herbalism and working with plant medicine for over 20 years. And when Ronnie and I met about 2 years ago, I learned that he was one of the lead nutritional experts in the world. And I had no idea. I didn't know who this guy was. I didn't know he'd written all these books. I had no idea that he had this extensive encyclopedia of knowledge. And we became friends, and we started talking about what does it mean to be a superhuman ninja on planet Earth in 2017? What does it mean to unlock your potential? What does it mean to change your DNA? And how do you do that? And so that was kind of how we met. That was the premise of that piece. So I'd love for you to just kind of share with everybody, for those who don't know you yet that are watching, tell us a little bit about how you came into this world of unlocking the human potential with superfoods.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, the way that I got started with all this was through athletics. I was training as a professional athlete in 2 different sports at 2 different times in my life. I was raised as a martial artist from the age of 4. And, you know, that was pretty much my life. That was pretty much everything to me. And I had a major knee surgery when I was 18 years old. And that was kind of what started it for me, where I pretty much, you know, grew up just like everyone else. I grew up on a standard American diet, a junk food diet, processed food, animal agricultural-based diet, corporately funded, and just like the whole, just like where pretty much most people are coming from, I was right there with everyone else. The only thing was, I was under the illusion that everything was just fine because I was this high-performing athlete. And because of my youth and genetics and whatever the case was, I was able to perform at a certain standard, and I was able to recover. I didn't think anything of it, because when you don't have an injury and you're used to that, you don't really think about the other side of it until it happens. So when I had my first knee injury and then my first knee surgery, that's when I started to think about my future. And my future beyond athletics, beyond an Olympic career in Taekwondo, and I started to think about the other side of it, which was, if I get injured and I can't recover, then what's going to happen to my life? It was a pretty, you know, it was a seed that started to grow in my mind of like, whoa, like what am I going to do with my life if this isn't going to pan out? And so, you know, I had another knee surgery a couple of years later. I went through years of rehabilitative, corrective exercising. And so I gained a great knowledge in how to repair the body and correct imbalances just through exercise. But really what took me to the other side of my healing was raw food. And so when I was about 24, after my second knee surgery, I got into living food. You know, that's a whole story in of itself of how I even got into it.
Next live.
Yeah, but basically what I ended up doing was I just started doing, actually Marcus Patrick, our mutual friend, was one of the gateways. So if you're watching,
Love
brother,
you, Marcus.
yeah, thank you for that. He knows. And so I just started watching YouTube videos and getting deep into it and then learning about it, and just clicked. It was like, of course what I put in my mouth is going to affect my physical body. It's going to affect my healing. It's going to affect my sleep quality. It's going to affect how this thing works. And it's actually going to allow me to make better decisions, because the better this thing works, the better quality decisions I make. All these things started to make sense. And long story short, so I was about 80% healed from all the rehabilitation, but there was a lingering issue that I couldn't get past. And so I got into raw food. I went all the way. I basically did this experiment. I was just like, okay, I want to see what's going to happen to me if I go 100% raw food, cut out all the animal products that I'm hearing are totally toxic and like sludge in my arteries, and I'm just like, this is totally new. So I'm like, wow, this must be like a secret weapon, like a fountain of youth. And so I decided to run an experiment on myself. I was like, let's see what's going to happen if I go 30 days all raw, vegan. And what was amazing is that a number of things, but the biggest thing was that on day 30 or something like that, I found myself going up into the hills where I grew up running. And I had run like 2, 3, 4, 5 miles every day for many years. And I stopped running because I got scared about my knees. Mm-hmm. And so it was something I loved to do, but it was like I almost just kind of blocked it out because I didn't want to re-injure myself. And the weirdest thing happened because I was so in the flow of raw food and like veganism, and like it was taking me somewhere out of my old paradigm, and I was just like riding this wave into this new reality. And I just found myself back at that trail, and I ran 5 miles up in the hills. It's like an up down. It's like massive inclines. Like you got to like burst up, and I come back, and the weirdest thing happened because it's like all the endorphins weared off, and I came back into like waking state consciousness, and I realized like, wait a minute, what just happened? Like, whoa, wait, I like literally forgot that I was even in pain to begin with. And that's the biggest, and that was the moment everything came through for me. I realized like, whoa, not only does this work, but this actually can heal me. And that wasn't my intention. It was like I was guided to do this. And I realized like, not only can this heal me, but it can heal me to the point where I forget that I was ever in pain to begin with. And that's a huge point. That's a huge point because subconsciously, I realized that most people are in pain every single day of their life. Mental pain, emotional pain, physical, spiritual pain. People are like literally suffering, and instead of dealing with it, they manage it and they normalize to their suffering and habituate to it, and then just sedate themselves, just like I did with food and alcohol and those kind of things. But this was really a moment where it was like total sobriety of just like, I got this vision of like, this is what I'm meant to do. And, my friends like David Wolf, he helped me like kind of mentor me over the years, and watching him and the kind of how he led such a big movement in the raw food world. Like I went to a David Wolf event, like almost 10 years ago. And that was the first time it really hit me that, oh, I could do that. Like this was a couple of years into it, but I didn't really have a community. Mm-hmm. I just kind of was like doing it on my own and living my life. But then that was the moment where I was like, oh, I could do that. I could get in front of a crowd and just like entertain them and just like and teach all this information and share it with like this like irreverent, enthusiastic passion. And that was the moment I kind of, it's just like there was a number of things, but that's just kind of where I came from and what got me into the nutrition thing. And that was like almost 10 years ago. So it's been a long journey since then.
Yeah, you can cover a lot of ground in 10 years.
Yeah.
So you look at, the standard American diet, which you and I and most of us were all raised in, which is, you eat food that you like, right, and it fills you up, and so you feel like you're getting something out of it. So you must be doing something right. Well, in our generation, we were never taught that, these foods were being genetically modified. These foods, yes, were being sprayed with glyphosate. These foods were being, shipped hundreds of miles, picked, 30 days in advance of their ripeness, and then we were consuming them, or they were being preserved, or they were, you know, adding additives, or they were frozen, and we were filling our bellies, but we weren't unlocking anything.
Yeah.
Right? We were just getting by. And so I remember being young and thinking, oh, by the time I'm 40, I'm 39 but now, just so you guys know, by the time I'm 40, I'm going to be old.
Right.
Right? Like I'm going to be hurting, I'm going to be achy, I'm going to be, you know, not able to do the things that I could do when I was 20. So this is where we get into the really fun, conversation, is when we talk about, okay, so you're following this thread, going into this raw movement, realizing that, okay, if I cut out these animal products, you know, cut out the
processed
violence,
food and
the processing, the poison, I cut out all the things that were potentially weighing me down, not only literally, but also, you know,
like
physically.
energetically, physically, And
so when you take this road of realizing that you actually can change the way you age.
Yes.
And that, I think, is where we get into a really fun conversation of realizing, like, I mean, I never really believe it's too late. I don't know about you, but there are some certain circumstances where it's just, you know, you're at that last leg of whatever stage 4 brain cancer it happens to be at. But I believe that the human body is capable to completely regenerate itself.
Absolutely.
So that's where we get into this fun conversation, which is really why I wanted to do this live with everybody tonight, was really to talk about how do we start that process. And when we think about the foundation of how we change our cells, and our cells are regenerative, right? They're regenerating at millions of cells per second. So how do we start that process of, instead of, you know, going into this constant breakdown of aging, we're going into this catabolic breakdown stage where it's just, we're just basically fishing in disease and death. How do we reverse the clock, and how do we go into this fountain of youth mentality? So I would love for you to kind of go into the base foundation, which in my opinion has got to be our proteins, with how we're going to be regenerating those cells. So I would love for you to share what you've learned about protein, because I think protein is probably one of the most misunderstood things that we consume on an everyday basis.
Absolutely.
And so I would love for you to just kind of share what you've learned about proteins and how we can really accelerate our age reversal, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, when it comes to protein, I mean, there's a lot of hoopla, and there's a lot of like kind of just like ideas of what protein is. Basically, it's stringing amino acids together. So you kind of have to break that term down from protein to, there's different sources of protein, but it's basically amino acids that get strung together like a DNA cord. And it's actually the amino acids that have to be assimilated and distributed into the body to have any kind of effect. And so when most people think of protein, they think of, like, you know, you go to the supermarket or something and someone's like, oh, I'm going to go get some protein. Really what they're saying is, I'm going to go get some meat. And that's always kind of a weird phrase. It's a weird part of our language, and it's kind of a disconnect. If it just from that side, if it's a disconnect, just call it a piece of meat or something. But people actually call it protein, and when you do the actual nutrient analysis on a piece of meat, the amount of protein or amino acids is extremely low. A piece of chicken might have 1.7% per dry matter weight of viable protein. And the Max Planck Institute of Science in the 1950s did a research study to see if they cooked a piece of steak, what would be the viable or the biologically available amount of protein that the human body could actually utilize. And they came to find out, after you cook a piece of steak, 50% of the amino acids are rendered unusable. And we know that kidney disease is, the number one cause of kidney disease is undigested protein that gets stored and backed up in the kidneys. And it's nitrogenous protein, which is entirely animal-based, right? So we have to just kind of readjust the lenses that we're looking at some of these common held memes and themes of society. And so when you think about protein or you think about amino acids, I look at it like, and it doesn't really matter what kind of diet you subscribe to, the point is that really what we want is we want immediately deliverable forms of amino acids that are full spectrum, or branched chain amino acids was like a huge movement, you know, in the bodybuilding world. And I use those, and I find like especially as a vegetarian, I found that when I started doing amino acids, it was like my body started to fill in very quickly, and I train still, and it's like I don't actually have to train. I don't train 3 days or 3 times a day like I did for 10 years as an athlete. But I do basic weight training, and I'm actually noticing that I'm regenerating. I'm not getting sore. My body is filling out a little bit, and everything is like everything is online, if you know what I mean, like muscular energy, brain function, because amino acids are not just for like building muscle and torn tissue. Like your blood sugar gets balanced when you have the right amount of protein, and your brain chemistry, your neurotransmitters like your serotonin, your dopamine, your GABA, all of that stuff, the feel-good hormones that people are in society are having a lot of difficulty with, and a lot of like inability to think straight, mood fluctuations, depressive issues. I mean, all this kind of stuff. Like, there's chemical imbalances, and the precursors for these chemicals are amino acids. And so my feeling is that we need a source of amino acids that is deliverable into the bloodstream, into the cells immediately, that doesn't have all this other material like connective tissue and whatever else is going on. You think a piece of meat,
Toxins.
it's like, yeah, and a delivery system for environmental toxins in the fat tissue, right? So it's something that immediately goes right into your body, and you can feel it. Yeah. Like when I take amino acids, really amazing, clean amino acids, I feel it in my brain first, actually. It's like, I don't know if you've had that experience, but it's almost like a nootropic. Like, I feel like this, almost like this, like, not like a niacin flush, but it's like this flushing effect, and like this, I'm like on. It's almost like a mild caffeine effect without it's like, there's like some kind of neurological activation.
I love that. And that's why I think that, when we talk about protein is just so completely misunderstood. Mm-hmm. It's really the amino acids that we want. Right. And there was a study that was done by Dr. Luca Moretti, and he was talking about amino acids, and he was saying from the time we're 20 to the time we're 40, if we eat conventional meats or proteins, that our kidneys and our liver will actually shrink to half the size. Half the size that we were when we were 20 by the time we're 40. And so we wonder why aging happens so fast, because the kidneys and the liver are actually going on strike. Right. They're like, we don't know what else to do with this. We're overloaded. We can't process this. So a lot of the times what will happen is that it will start to store those toxins in the adipose fat. Because it's like, I can't filter this. Yeah. I got to put it over here. And so when you can find a vegan, organic, or non-GMO source of amino acids that are going to deliver, a 99% net nitrogen utilization directly into the blood. Yeah. No kidneys, no liver processing. It goes from your stomach through your blood directly into your muscles within 23 minutes. When I started to learn about this science, it blew my mind. Yeah. I was like, why would anyone ever eat steak again? Like, okay, I understand it tastes good. I understand there's this programming that we have become accustomed to, in our generation in particular. It was like, what do you think of when I say breakfast? Eggs, bacon, steak, right? We think of these things because the precursors to that are that there's an industry that is running, that wants you to buy these things and is convincing you that this is what's best for your body. Right. Huh? Nate just said hi. Hi, Nate. Yeah, so when we start thinking about proteins and how to really properly set the foundation, which is why I wanted to talk about protein first, because without that, nothing else matters. Yeah, it's like building blocks. Building blocks, right? So we set the foundation, and then we can start to build the house around it. This is a conversation Robert and I have often, where he wants to start talking about painting the house, and I'm like, well, you can't paint the house until you build the foundation, right? So that's why it's so super important to talk about these building blocks. So we know that amino acids are the building blocks for setting that foundation so that the cells can reproduce at a rapid rate. And then next is the blood. Right? So we have to get everything where it needs to go to. So when you think about healthy blood, what do you think about? Like, what are the things that sort of come to mind when you think about healthy blood?
First I think about chlorophyll. I mean, the number one detoxification tool is chlorophyll. And that can be taken a number of ways. So basically, chlorophyll is concentrated sunlight in its plant blood. And so that is actually the number one thing that detoxifies and cleanses our blood and actually rebuilds the blood. Is when you look at, like, okay, so you look at the blood, the dominant molecule is iron, right? And that could be heme iron, which is like blood-based iron, so like from animals, for example, from a piece of meat or steak. And then there's non-heme iron, which would be plant-based iron. And so what's interesting about chlorophyll is that the dominant molecule in chlorophyll is magnesium. The number one mineral deficiency in the world is magnesium. The number one molecule, or the number one mineral for the heart that the heart utilizes the most is magnesium. The number one disease in the world is heart disease. What does this all have to do? Well, it all has to do with the blood, because your cardiovascular system is suctioning and flowing blood throughout your entire system. And so all roads lead home, as the saying goes, right? So when I think about that, I think of what's interesting is when someone takes in chlorophyll-rich food, or shots of chlorophyll, or things like chlorella. The reason chlorella, it's the single-celled algae, the superfood algae, chlorella, it's chlorophyll. And that's why it has its name, because it's the number one food in chlorophyll. Like 40 times more than wheatgrass. You know, we keep hearing about like the benefits of wheatgrass, but chlorophyll is like some other kind of deal, which is which is like the revolution that you and I and a lot of people are a part of, which is the superfood revolution. And so chlorophyll rebuilds the blood, and it actually pops in the magnesium molecule. And the magnesium also helps to build the blood. And the basic idea is that you just got to clean your blood out, because the blood gets sludgy. You know, when we think of like diabetic conditions, hypoglycemia, blood sugar roller coasters, it basically has to do with the mucking up of the blood. And the blood gets very thick, and insulin doesn't get secreted properly from the pancreas, or it just can't get through all the fat or all the debris, let's call it, in the blood, and it can't get the sugar into the receptor site. And so then there's this backup effect of blood, and then we have all these insulin-resistant, insulin-dependent issues, or these diabetic conditions. And it's really not that complicated. Right. You know, when you really chunk it down, and I feel like I'm synthesizing a lot of different parts right now. It's like, yeah, you got to clean your blood. Yeah, and there's a lot of ways to do it, but the basic thing is green foods. Chlorophyll. Like chlorophyll, green superfoods.
So basically when you consume green superfoods, it's almost like an oral blood transfusion.
Sure.
With magnesium instead of iron.
Yeah.
And so the best sources that I've come across are chlorella, spirulina, wheatgrass, maybe kamut, alfalfa, barley greens. You know, yeah, you can eat salads, and yeah, you can go to the farmer's market, but if you want to really like get
and
it
you should
going,
do those things.
You should do those things as well. But like if you are at that point where your blood is slowing down, and if your blood's slowing down, then that means, I mean, think about your blood as like a river.
Right.
And if there's a healthy flowing river, then it's not getting stagnant anywhere. There's no pockets. But when you think about when the river starts to sludge up and it creates these pockets, these little eddies, and then they start to get thick, and then you start to see this weird stuff growing over there, that is where disease will grow. And that's why oxygenating the blood, right, bringing oxygen into the blood through using plants, by getting that magnesium, you're not only going to feel better, but your body's going to be functioning better.
Yes.
And so there's so much about, you know, alkalizing the blood and using food to do that. So let's talk a little bit about acidity versus alkalinity in the human body. I think that would be a great topic to kind of go into next.
Yeah, that's a pretty big one too. So I'll just try to simplify that. Basically, acidity or acidosis, it's kind of a clinical term for when the body gets way too acidic. And we've all kind of heard this, but there's some distinctions and nuances that people could use to understand what that really means. And that's based on like your pH scale, which is like your potential hydrogen and in the blood. And so when your pH goes too low, then you basically build up acid crystals and acidic based compounds that sludge up the blood, that cause arthritic issues. Bone mineral density like osteoporosis, where the bones start leaching calcium, which is the #1 alkaline mineral for your bones. It starts leaching the calcium to buffer the acidosis in the blood, because if your blood pH goes too low, you die. And so your body works in a hierarchy of survival. And so there's going to be certain priorities. And so like your skin quality and your hair and your nails and even your bones at some point, that becomes less of a priority than your blood chemistry. So there's going to be certain minerals that are alkaline, like calcium, that are going to get stripped from certain areas to buffer the main priority. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like when people really understand that, then it's like, okay, wow. That's amazing. And so, and it's interesting because like, you know, when I think of all the compartmentalized issues of like autoimmune conditions, calcification, diabetes, cancers of all kinds, you know, joint and bone issues, it's like, okay, well, when you trace it all back to the root cause, and really how someone gets started with this is like, you got to flush the blood and you got to remineralize. And you gotta basically clean house.
Clean house.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, it's like the foods that we're putting in are giving us literally nothing.
Literally.
Literally nothing. And not only that, but most of the foods, I think there was something, a report I was reading recently that said something around 75% of the foods that you eat, if you are eating out at a restaurant, if you are not buying organic and you're not buying non-GMO, 75% of the foods that you are consuming are saturated in glyphosate.
Absolutely.
And if you're consuming glyphosate, you're completely destroying all of the beneficial bacteria that are in your second gut.
Yeah.
And or in your gut, or in your microbiome, which is the second brain.
Yep.
And if you're killing all of the beneficial flora that are in your gut, then, and that's your second brain, then you're not going to be thinking, your blood's going to be slowing down.
Yeah.
You're not going to be getting any of the nutrition of whatever you're consuming, and you're basically on the path to death.
Yep.
You're on the path to destruction.
Yeah.
And so, of course, we'll always be promoting first and foremost, you know, if you're not eating certified organic, please make that decision. You're investing in your health. There's no better, you know, investment you can make. If you're not buying non-GMO certified, please start making that change, because buying certified organic and non-GMO is the first step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Right? And then fresh foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, greens and grasses. These things are going to help your body to reverse acidity and go into alkalinity. You're going to be feeling better. Your joints aren't going to be aching as bad. You're going to be sleeping better. There's going to be so many benefits that you'll make just by making those two choices right there.
Absolutely.
Right? And then, you know, raw and vegan, and we can go on and on from there. So those pieces are, I think, you know, we have the foundation of the proteins with the amino acids. We move into talking about the blood. I think next we should talk about the immune system.
Sure.
So 80% of our immune system is regulated by the gut.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, it seems to me like focusing on our microbiome or focusing on our gut should be everyone's priority.
Absolutely.
If you're getting sick, if you're feeling slow, if you're wondering why you're foggy, you're not mentally clear, you don't have the energy you used to have. And so when you think about rebuilding the immune system, I know you're a huge fan of mushrooms, so totally. I know we're going to go into that next. So I want to kind of talk about the immune system. Yeah. And like, what are your favorite superfoods that you use to boost the immune system so that the body actually can be healthy enough to repair itself? Because if your immune system's shot, and even though you're taking these things, you still have to have the villi in your gut to even be able to absorb the nutrition to begin with.
Right. Right.
So what would you think as far as like a base foundation to help people as far as like foods that they can consume.
Sure.
Like a basic like eating diet. Like
Sure.
aside from superfoods, where
Yeah.
would you start for immune system and rebuilding the gut flora?
Yeah, well, and also another interesting fact is 80 to 90% of your serotonin is actually produced in the gut, primarily.
And if you don't have any serotonin, you are not a happy
You
camper.
know, and you're going to actually be reaching for every kind of external stimulation you can find in different ways to boost that serotonin production, which is going to be short-lived, and it's going to cause a biological bankruptcy down the road. So, I mean, this is super important. Like, the immune system's another big topic, but just chunking it down to, like, your gut, your beneficial bacteria, your microbiome, your digestion. The foods that I love for that are, you mentioned mushrooms. I love, and this is not like certain like psilocybin mushrooms or certain things like that. That's a whole different topic.
It's not brown button.
Yeah.
Or portobellos.
And it's not like the button mushrooms that you get in the store that may or may not have mold infections on them, by the way. So you want to make sure if you do that, you got to really like get organic. But medicinal mushrooms. And so medicinal mushrooms are like things like reishi mushroom and chaga mushroom and cordyceps mushroom and there's like 20 others. And it's funny, I was just at a conference and I was talking to a mushroom grower. And I was talking to this guy who has this amazing like, you know, shiitake and maitake and reishi mushroom growing lab. And we're just geeking out for like an hour on the power of medicinal mushrooms. And it's an amazing subject, but basically these mushrooms, they have certain compounds in them called polysaccharides and beta-glucans in particular, which not only, they don't just like boost the immune system, because if I say that, people might think like, oh, it's just like it's an immune boosting thing. It's like, no, it's a whole different thing. They actually educate your white blood cells, and they teach your immune system how to become adaptogenic. And this is a different spin on like next level, like what's going to be like nutraceuticals, like the superfood products of the future and of what's happening right now. It's an understanding that there's certain types of nutrition that teach your body how to become more autonomically empowered or intelligent. When I say autonomically, I mean voluntarily teaching itself. So you don't have to consciously be like, oh, I need my echinacea today. I need my garlic today. I need my oregano today to boost my immune. I need my vitamin C to boost my immune system. Your body becomes its own inner physician, and it actually, the right genetics and epigenetics get turned on, the microbiome and the right bacteria start to spawn and enculturate themselves. So there's an intelligence going on in the living body where you don't have to consciously monitor it. That should be a weight off a lot of people's mind, because most people are trying to like, okay, I take this supplement, and I need 600 milligrams of this thing, I mean, how effective is that? How many people's houses do we know where they open up the cupboard and it's like, I've been hired to go into people's house and change their whole family's kitchen, and I go in there and I'm just astonished by what's in the cupboards, and I'm like, when was the last time you used this? And the people have been married 20, 30 years, and it's like the supplements have been in the cupboard the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, okay, clearly something about human behavior is showing up here. So when you understand there's things like medicinal mushrooms, not only do they empower the immune system, but the compounds educate the immune system on how to empower itself. And this is part of a strategy in probably a book or something, like a program that I'll create at some point called How to Never Ever Get Sick Again.
That's a good one.
And medicinal mushrooms are a huge part of that. Everything we've talked about is a huge part of that. Obviously, things like prebiotics and probiotics are essential. And then like just like superfood nutrition as a category. And what I think is coming up too is that when we stop putting in the things that are causing a white blood cell like reaction, meaning that whenever we put something in our mouth that our body feels is foreign, doesn't know what to do with, there is an immune system reaction, and it's attacking that thing. This is how a lot of autoimmune conditions get ramped up. It's because the body doesn't recognize what they're putting in. It's called leukocytosis. It's a white blood cell reaction. And it actually attacks it like a foreign object. So people are putting all this stuff in their mouth, and they're thinking like, oh, this is good for me. It's building my muscles. It's doing this. But the body, and meanwhile, the immune system is on the alert. And that's why people, this is an interesting point about this. So like the carbo coma, or like the Thanksgiving dinner coma, people think it's like, oh, I just had too many carbohydrates, and that could be part of it. But really what's going on is that the body is under such distress that it actually has to shut itself down for the immune system to come fully online.
Wow.
So people literally are getting drowsy. They're just getting shut down because there's so much, the immune system's just so backed up. It's like, okay, we need to turn this off, turn this off, turn this off. Okay, shut him down. And then someone passes out. And then finally it's like, okay, we can save the ship now.
Right. Wow. Wow. And it's just so amazing that the body is doing all of these things, whether we're conscious of it or not. And so
Exactly.
I love that idea of being able to, you know, give you almost like an ingredients play-by-play of being like, hey, these things you could be taking on a daily basis. They're going to assist you so you don't need to be thinking about it.
Yep.
Right? You can be thinking about things you need to be thinking about, which is, you know, getting the kids to school and making sure you pay your bills on time.
And your purpose and
having
doing what you
fun.
love to do. Yeah, having fun.
And extenuating your life.
Yes.
Instead of, you know, unconsciously stuffing our mouth with things that are actually destroying our life force.
Yes.
And I think that's really the premise of why I wanted to have this conversation was, you know, unlocking the human potential, which is based so much on the consciousness
Absolutely.
of the decision
Absolutely.
that you make.
Yes. Yeah, from point A to point B. This thing right here, this is actually a decision, but people are unconsciously participating in their life, and they don't actually make that conscious distinction. Like for example, the great thing about this whole thing that woke up for me getting on the food path is that the gap between thinking about food and putting it in my mouth got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I actually realized, like, at no point do I ever put anything into my mouth that's not a conscious decision. Now I have responsibility. Now I have awareness. Now I have the power. Whatever I choose to put in my body, it's a choice, not just an unconscious medication pattern or whatever the case is. It's a conscious choice, and that's where we start. We just start with making a decision. You know, you want to live forever, you got to decide to. You got to decide you want that, you know, or to live to 120 or 50 or, you know, or 150 or whatever, or you want to start that business that you want to get financial freedom, or you want to be in that harmonious relationship. Well, you got to decide that that's for you and that you're going to walk that path. And it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't, you know, not everything comes together overnight. We got to become the right person for our dreams to manifest. But that's the point, though, is that we can't realize our full potential unless we decide that not only do we deserve it, but that's our birthright, and that's what we want.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that so many people wait to make that decision.
Yes.
Until they're faced with death or some kind of traumatic experience.
Yeah.
Or hopefully the latter, where you actually get educated and you understand and you're willing to learn, you're willing to be coached, you're willing to understand that there are people this is why Ronnie's here and why we're doing this, is because Ronnie's far smarter than I am, and I love that we're able to ask these questions and to bring this stuff up, because you know, when you stop learning, you stop growing. And if you stop growing, you're dying.
Right.
So if we can be learning and growing, not only just myself and the decisions that I'm making, but us together as a collective, coming together as a collective and realizing, hey, listen, I don't need to know everything, and you don't need to know everything, and you don't need to know everything, and neither do you, and neither does Ronnie. But if we all come together, we all know something. And if we can all bring something to the table, then this is where we start talking about the human revolution.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And it all stems from what we put in our mouth.
Yes.
Because you can't, I mean, I'm not going to say you can't, but you most likely can't have a enlightened, healthy, amazing experience in life.
Yeah.
If you're constantly poisoning your body.
Oh, see, this is a good one.
Right?
Yeah.
I
have to say something about this with that point in particular. So I've spoken at the Agape Church, Michael Beckwith and Agape. I've spoken there like 4 times, and I do these 2.5-hour workshops. And one of the things that I constantly tell them, I'm like, look, like, okay, everyone's coming to church. It would be blasphemy to desecrate church, right? And to have like dirt and dust and mold and cobwebs all over the place. That would be blasphemy, right? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, wouldn't it also be considered blasphemy to desecrate your holy temple? And what's more important, this building or this temple right here? And that right there, for all the spiritually inclined folks out there, like, and what you're saying, like, to feel like, to access consciousness, to access your highest potential of mind, body, and spirit, like, it's a non-negotiable,
It truly is, and I think that we'll only touch maybe 1% of it,
Yeah.
like, I think our human consciousness is limited, like the dial's turned way down, because if we were seeing, God consciousness all the time, we probably wouldn't be able to function.
Yeah,
it would
probably
just be
disintegrate.
We'd just explode, right? We just wouldn't be able to handle it. So chunking it down to the point of going, okay, well, what can I be responsible for?
Right.
And if God lives within all of us, then that means God is within me. And why would you have the temple dirty for God? Like, you just wouldn't. That just doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
And so if we can simplify it down for people to just be like, make some basic decisions for yourself, which would be, like I said, certified organic and non-GMO. Like, step 1.
Yeah.
If you can do that, then you're moving in the right direction. Yeah. Your body will start to repair itself.
And you're really on a self-esteem level, you're empowering yourself.
Yes.
And that's the key too, because it's not even about knowing all of this, it's about empowering yourself and having the confidence and the self-esteem that you're worth it. The reason people don't invest, whether it's investing in a coach, we've talked about that, investing in organic food at the bare minimum, it's because secretly people don't feel like they deserve it. And so you have to, or let me rephrase it, you get to experience what it's like to be a fully confident human being, fully congruent, fully aligned, embodied, and self-willed human being when you start making some of these small decisions, because one thing will lead to another. Everything leads to another, and it will compound, it will evolve, it will grow, will ripple just from that one small decision. The biggest thing that ever happened to me was the first green vegetable juice I ever drank. That was the single biggest breakthrough, and that led to the healing of my body, which led to the healing of my heart, which led to the last 10 years of running around the world and writing all these books and podcasts and lectures and the most amazing friendships and alliances with some of the most incredible human beings like yourself that I would never ever have even known about if I didn't drink that one green juice. So I want to emphasize the power of making a simple decision.
I think that's it. I think that everything is based on making a decision.
Yes.
And unfortunately, most people wait for a diagnosis or they face death in the mirror, or there's a major tragedy before they make the decision.
Yeah.
So that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this live, is to say, don't wait for that.
Right.
Just make the decision now. Make one green drink a day. Consume some vegan amino acids. Clean out your blood.
Right.
Balance out your pH. Rebuild your microbiome.
Yeah.
Start building your body on a level, and it's not complicated. And this is where the fun part really comes in, is that Ronnie and I have locked arms with a manufacturer that exceeds our standards. And I didn't know this was available. So I've been an organic farmer since I was about 15 was when I started this journey. I'm 39 now. I have, managed hundreds of acres. I've grown really a lot of food and medicine for a lot of people, but it was always capped out. There was always a point where we couldn't produce enough because there wasn't enough land, or there wasn't enough people, or it was too expensive. And I know for Ronnie, we have all of these amazing things that we want to offer people, but where are we going to get it from, right? And it's like most of the sourcing that is available is not up to our standards. So we found a manufacturer that not only exceeds USDA organic standards, but has, is committed to the non-GMO movement, is vegan, is kosher, is certified organic, blowing my mind, the scalability. And that's where it comes down to access.
Yes.
So you and I have talked about that our goal is to end human suffering.
Yes.
And the only way that we can end human suffering is for a person to make a decision that they no longer want to suffer.
Yes, exactly.
And so if we can help people get access to the foods, the pure whole foods that will unlock the potential to be able to make those decisions and continually move forward, we are ending human suffering.
Absolutely.
And that's on the physical level.
Yeah.
So we're super excited about that. If you guys want to learn more, please go ahead and comment down in the comments. Ronnie and I will be in touch with everybody who wants to learn more about unlocking the human potential with superfoods. Please go ahead and comment, yes please, me, in the comments, and we'll make sure that we get back to you guys within the next 24 hours. And so that's the physiological part. Now I want to go into unlocking the human potential with this new school that you founded.
Sure.
So you have the School for Human Potential, which is, we know we've got the physiological covered.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go into the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and financial. Yeah. Because you can't really truly have pure health without also having financial health.
Yeah, how are you going to get everything?
Some of the wealthiest people I know are the most miserable people I've ever met.
That's true.
And so it doesn't go to show, like, once you hit billionaire status, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're healthy and happy at all. So let's talk a little bit about this School for Human Potential, why you founded it, and what its purpose is.
Yeah, wow. Well, its purpose is to empower other leaders like conscious coaches and visionary leaders, transformational teachers, and spiritual-based entrepreneurs. And working with them in a 3-month program. It's a virtual group-based program, which is actually launching. The first one is launching next week.
Okay, great.
Yeah, next Thursday.
So we'll put the link down in the comments, just so you guys know. That link will be put in the comments.
Yeah, and just in short, it's really a program and a platform designed to activate one's own sense of their genius, one's own sense of their own free will, and really creating or helping them establish total alignment in every area of their life to truly manifest their dharma, or manifest their business, manifest their relationship. It doesn't matter what someone's trying to manifest. If they're out of alignment and they're incongruent from within, there's always going to be friction and conflict, and they're going to manifest mixed results. And so that's kind of a bit of the philosophy of it. There's a 3-month program that I take people through, like quantum collapsing timelines. Another way of saying that is rapid manifestation, but in a very well worked out method to actually create that practically through the alignment process. So again, that program's based for coaches and educators, entrepreneurs, teachers, people that are really on a mission and want to align their mission and their purpose and maximize every area of their life, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, relationally, in their relationships, which is probably the biggest part of life, right? This happens to be kind of an important thing.
Yeah, it's quite important.
Yeah, and entrepreneurially, not in the sense of building a business, but a mindset around contributing. So what is your contribution to humanity, and how do all these other areas of your life align to allow one to be able to do that? And then, so what I think would be really relevant for everyone that's tuning into the Facebook Live right now is that this Wednesday, almost tomorrow, but yeah, like almost like this Wednesday on the 18th, I'm doing a live free webinar. And you can go to www.theschoolforhumanpotential.com. And it's going to be about a 90-minute live webinar. And we did one a couple weeks ago that had incredible feedback. People were like raving about it. So we decided, hey, let's do another one before this program launches. And it's really based on giving people extraordinary value right up front. And whether somebody decides to do this program or not, it doesn't matter. I want to empower as many people that I can touch that this particular subject is really relevant for. That's people that are they're sick of the hustle and grind. They're tired of trying to just like make their life work and go against the grind or work 20 hours a day or whatever the meme is out there right now, trying to crush it, but they really want to maximize and work their butt off doing what they love.
Yes.
And actually be joyfully exhausted at the end of the day, because their life is in such congruency and such alignment that they have the time and space to do what they love to do, and they're so in love with what they love to do that they find a way to make that all they do. And that is absolutely possible, and that is part of my mission. Just in the work I do in the coaching world, that's part of my mission just as much as the health liberation mission is, and they're definitely they're symbiotic. Yeah,
totally. And you and I were talking about this earlier. We were talking about how there are people that work jobs,
right,
and they get into that rhythm of the job.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. We're not saying there's anything wrong with that. Then you have the entrepreneur,
right,
who tends to give way more and sees very little results in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that consistency. It's no different than this.
Right.
It's no different. It's that every single minute, every single breath, finding the consciousness, what are you putting in your body, taking those steps forward. And so we were talking about the difference between having a job and being an entrepreneur, and building something and knowing the sacrifices that you're going to make on the front end.
Yeah.
But it doesn't even matter because you love what you're doing, because you're awakening your individual genius.
Yes.
Like, you have your genius. I have my genius.
Yes.
Everyone in this room has their genius. There's no one that has any more time in the day.
Right.
We all have the same amount of time in the day. Sir Richard Branson and Tony Robbins and Michael Beckwith and some of these huge people that we look up to, they have the same amount of time that we do.
Right.
It's what you choose to do with that time that is what will make your life.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like the School for Human Potential is so focused on helping people awaken their inner genius for who they are.
Yes.
And there's this great thing that I love to say is like, find your lane and drive in it. Like, we all have our target, and who we speak to or who resonates with what we share. And it's finding that through our own congruency.
Right.
Like, if you find out how you can be congruent, then you're naturally going to be resonating at a frequency that's going to attract people who want to align with that congruency.
Right.
So how can you help people to awaken that potential